my first lockup. My mom used to go to school, and they would lock me in the room inside the crib, and I was never let out. I wasn't fed. I wasn't changed. I wasn't hugged. Um, and they kept me there until my mother got home from school. I developed a head banging concept because that's what I would do, which I carried on into my teenage years. The reason for this lockup was my mom was originally from Texas, a Latina from Texas. My father, whom I never met, is African American, so I'm mixed. And foster parents that we lived with, they were, I would say, prejudiced. So I got the grunt of what happened when my mom went to school. So as I started to go into this, I started to realize that this was my first place of being incarcerated. Um, but don't get sad. Don't feel depressed. I pray that I haven't pulled the tear out of no one's eyes, because I promise you, it's going to get worse. I can guarantee you that it's going to get worse. Um, so when I was raised with my mom, we was able to get an apartment, and I was raised around convicts. I was raised around dope dealers. I was raised around addicts. I was raised around everything that a child shouldn't be raised around. And it was just, they became our family. So I was born and raised into this really tragic lifestyle. And it was by no means that my mother had picked this, but this is where our journey it started together. And so as I take you on this journey down my twisted childhood and teenage life to adolescent life, you're gonna vividly see things that took place and how I became part of my environment. But I don't want to get you all depressed. Yes, that was my childhood. We're going to jump into around age 13. When I was 13 years old, I started to get involved in the hood. I was hanging around the mission. I was 13. I was, we called them cholos in our days. We wore the baggy dickies and the Pendletons, and so I got really caught up in that lifestyle. And I was out there hanging around in the streets. I was now getting high. I was now gang banging. I was now becoming the product in which I was raised around. But don't really you can't really blame my mother for this, because for one, my mother did the best she could. When she was a little girl, my grandfather, he killed my grandmother in the act of rage. So my mom was never really raised with her mother because she was 5 years old. And so my mom was brought to San Francisco, where she did her best as a young girl, lost in the world herself. So these things she did was, she protected me. She ended up marrying a man that took took a place of a father, but he married her so the system wouldn't take me from her. But throughout all this time of my life, I was going through the abuse and watching how my family was living. So as a 13-year-old running the streets, I started going in and out of juvenile hall. Go figure, right? Where I started with my mother. Now I'm in and out of juvenile hall. So I did that for a couple of years. And then at the age of 15, I was put into a group home. And here I am again, locked away from home in this group home. I spent a few months there and convinced my mom that it was time to come back home, and, did the whole song and dance. I'm sorry, I'm not going to mess up anymore, which didn't really last too long because I was back out there on the streets again. And now I was getting into more trouble. At the age of 17, I started using harder drugs, started selling drugs, got more deeper into the gang life, and going to school. None of that was important. All that was important was being on the block with my homeboys and doing what we did. Age of 18, there I was again, county jail. I spent so much time in the county jail. It was like it was my second home. I was just in and out of there for possession of drugs, under the influence of PCP. I was smoking angel dust. I was drinking beers. I was having sex. I was doing everything that you could do in the world. I was just really lost. And so at this point, I was transferred to San Bruno County Jail. Now, this place was like a mini prison. As you could see throughout my life, I stayed incarcerated somehow, and my lifestyle never changed. So it just stayed that way. So they had two north, two south. It went all the way up to 6 tiers. It was like this torpedo that shot up in the air. And my first time there, they shot me to the 6th floor, which all those dudes on that and six north and 6 south were going back to prison. I hadn't even been to prison yet, but they stuck me around a bunch of convicts. Go figure. I'm still around everything I was raised around, everything I hung around. So again, I'm just becoming more of this product of my environment. You know, we talk about how things happen. You know, we tend to miss that a person's upbringing plays a big part. Went from there, got a 16-month sentence. In the hood, going to prison was the pinnacle of everything, because if you made it to prison, you the homie. And now I'm on my way to prison. And I remember walking down North Block Yard, and I'm thinking, what the heck is going on? How did I end up here? Even though my mindset was this is where I was aiming for, walking down that yard was there was some fear now, because these dudes were twice my size, twice my age, and I'm thinking, what just happened? The worst thing happened that could have happened to anybody that is doing time. Someone called my name. Hey, Ronnie Loaf, what's up, homie? And that was it. Now it was like I was in the county jail still. Now I'm in prison. That was like a county jail because I'm with my friends. So I did that. I got out, right back to the street life, right back to the drug life, right back to the womanizing. And that was my life. And I went in and out for a couple of times. And I remember going into San Quentin one time, and I was walking down to the yard to do burpees and all those other good things, not even thinking about God or nothing. And I remember going back to my cell, and I'm sitting in my bunk, and I hear this Catholic father priest walking down the corridor, and I asked if he could pray with me. So, you know, I was raised Catholic, so I'm trying to get some prayer. He asked me while I was there. I told him. But he asked me about this word called repent. And so, long story short, we said a prayer, and I remember jumping back on my bunk, and I remember sitting there, and I felt this like warm hand like jump into my body and pull me out and like wash me and cleanse me and just put me back in. And I remember this tear falling out my eye, and I'm thinking, what just happened to me? And to the corner of my eye is a Bible sitting on the bunk. And I'm thinking, what? That was not there when I left. And so this was my first encounter with God. I went to Jamestown Prison, did God, I got out, and life showed up. I started with God in the pen, but when I got out, as anybody will tell you, the world shows up. Bills need to get paid. I had a daughter. So I ended up slinging dope again, right back to the pen again. So now I'm in the pen again. I get out, have another child from a different woman, right back to the pen again. I'm like on my way to my third prison. And I'm like, wow, this is just this cycle that kept going on with me. So finally, I get out, and I get sentenced to 17 years for a drug case that I fought and got 4 years out of, and I was sent to Folsom State Prison. And in Folsom State Prison was the worst thing that was hell. It was a castle that you could just feel death so strongly. And I did 3 years there, and my mindset just twisted up. I remember getting out, and I remember this moment like it happened yesterday. I was sitting at the table with my mother, and she made me my favorite meal, my banana pudding pie and my lasagna. And I'm sitting there eating, and she's looking at me, and I'm looking at her, and she starts weeping, and I'm like, "Why are you weeping?" And she asked me this question. She said, "Where's my son?" I said, "He's sitting right here. What do you mean, where's your son?" She said, "You're not my son." She got up and walked away. And I didn't understand then what I definitely understand now. I came home institutionalized, and that little boy that went through that really dramatic upbringing, I left in prison. And I came home with this evil, demonic, twisted person. Whole lot of stuff happened. I ended up throwing juntas. Juntas are meetings that we call in Spanish. Started getting these kids all wrapped up in my demented lifestyle in my mind. And remember, I met this really nice lady, and it was a blessing. I got a son from her, but we're not together anymore. But I remember meeting her, and she was nothing like anything I had ever been around. She wasn't in the gang life, didn't know nothing. So these kids started running down the block, and I'll never forget this. I was sitting in my house, and she was on the bed, and I grabbed her and I pulled her down. I said, "Don't move." And I seen the kids running, and I went to the bathroom because I seen them bleeding. I grabbed the towel, ran down the stairs, and I grabbed this kid by his head because it was split open. And he said, "We did what you said, Boggle. We did what you said, but there was too many of them." And as they're saying this, I hear this voice behind me, a familiar voice. "Hey, Muniz, what happened?" And I froze because it's a cop. I knew his voice. You see, that statement that kid said could have got me 25 years for a gang enhancement because I'm running all this stuff. That messed me up, and by the time the end of the night, the girl was like, "You're crazy. I don't want nothing to do with you. You're out of it. Please just take me home." And I understood. Um, I want to end this on this note because there's so much more that I could tell you that happened, but I want to end on this note of when me and her separated. I moved out, and I remember one day sitting in my house, and I looked up to heaven, and I said, "God, you met me in prison, but now I need you. You really are as real as you say you are. I could really use you now." And I remember crying, and I remember getting on my bed, and I'm weeping, and I'm here. It's like 12 in the afternoon. And when I came up to breathe, it was like around 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And I remember walking up the street to go get some holy water from the church. See, Catholics do the holy water and the religious service. You can go to Catholic church and walk in and know exactly where they are. But when I did that, I went home and I drank the holy water. I took a shower in the holy water, and I said, "God, I'm all in. I'm all in. But what do I do?" And so as time went on, I got involved with getting involved with reentry. And I started helping people that were ex-felons, that were ex-convicts like myself, get their lives together. And so I took my spiritual journey and I took my demented lifestyle and I joined them together. And when I joined them together, I created Saved by Grace. And so I had the opportunity to meet Mark and the team because I worked with disabled folks and I was introduced to the email. And when I met them and knew that I had an opportunity to share my life, but also share God and what He did with my life, I couldn't resist it. So I thank you for allowing me to share a little bit of my testimony with you. And I pray that it made you get to know a little bit more about me. God bless you and have a very wonderful evening.